everyone, so I'm Megan, I'm a Year 1 Linguistics major, and today I'll be talking about the applicability of personality typologies. So I'm pretty sure all of you at some point have encountered personality tests, such as MBTI, and it's probably because you were bored and you decided to take a BuzzFeed quiz, or in school they forced you to take a quiz so that you could be grouped up for PW, right? So there's a common sentiment right there, which is skepticism, and so I want to address this. So the three questions that I'll be addressing today are basically, what is personality typology, where I'll be using MBTI as a main example. Secondly, why are we so doubtful of it? And thirdly, does it need to be empirically accurate for it to be useful? So first of all, I'll be addressing what is MBTI. So it's basically this theory of cognitive functions that this dude called Carl Jung, he's a well-known psychologist and he created this theory of cognitive functions, which is divided into two processes, mental processes, such as judging and perceiving. And so from there, he derived 8 cognitive functions using a priori reasoning. So these cognitive functions are basically how we process information in the real world. So from there, Myers and Briggs came along. Then they were like, this model is really useful. So they thought that actually it could help people compartmentalize and find out which occupations suited them best. Because they found out that certain personalities were perhaps more suited towards certain careers. So they adapted it into a test that could make it more applicable for everyday usage. So just to clarify, right, what I'm talking about today for MBTI testing is not the 16 personalities test, because it differs very greatly from the official MBTI test, which, you got to use real money to buy and take the test. So it has a very distinct means of testing the actual MBTI test using its own question types. So I'll be going on to the second question, which is basically, why is everybody so doubtful of MBTI? So the first thing that comes to your mind is basically, I'm so freaking special. Like, how can I be nailed down to one personality type or explained by all these 16 personality types? But this is actually not what MBTI claims to do. It actually just tries to explain us in terms of 16 constructs, which is to make sense of chaos. So one of the common criticisms of MBTI is that it's statistically invalid. So firstly, based on cluster analysis, actually we found out that personality types, right, there aren't actually 16 distinct ones that exist in the real population. There are probably about 8 or less, so actually it's not what MBTI claims it to be. And secondly, another criticism is that it uses binary questions instead of the Likert scale, which is that basically people have criticized it because they feel that the Likert scale is more applicable because it actually gives a range of responses to which respondents can actually find out their preferences and they can use a more accurate answer to their questions. So the third thing is the test-retest reliability, which is actually really low. It's about 50%, as opposed to the 80 or 90%, which is usually required for any personality test to be considered reliable. And another flaw of it is basically the things that we can't really control, which is the response distortion. So firstly, it's things like self-awareness, social desirability, and mood. So because obviously the test is a non-living thing, you cannot find out whether the answers that you put in are really true to yourself. So you cannot really find out, are these answers really accurate and representative of my real personality? So right now you're just like, okay Megan, you just gave me all the reasons not to believe in MBTI, right? But actually I just think that it's really important to know the limitations of any model that we use before we apply it to our lives. But just to emphasize that I think that not all criticisms of MBTI are actually fair, simply because I think that for example, the question types that I mentioned, there's actually a theoretical justification for them, and it's not actually indicative of MBTI's empirical validity in any way. Simply because the binary question types is actually engineered such that you cannot be 2 personality types at once, because that's not what Jung's theory sets out. You cannot be 2 personality types at once simply because it's psychologically implausible to consciously engage all 8 cognitive functions. You're not a superhuman. Yeah. So going on to my third question, which is basically, does MBTI need to be empirically accurate to be useful? And the short answer is no. Okay. So the Big Five, for example, right, is the most empirically accurate model out there that maps universal personality traits amongst humans. So it's the most empirically accurate one, but it also has its own limitations despite being quantitatively strong. So basically, it is very descriptive, it's data-driven, and basically it also gives us measurements without really telling us what they mean. And instead of that, MBTI actually tells us what they mean. It doesn't constrict itself to basically making claims based on direct observation. So MBTI in that sense is very qualitatively strong, and it supersedes a lot of personality typologies in terms of its inner intricacies and its complexity. So it's simply because of this nature of Jung's theory which is so complex that actually makes it very unsuitable to empirical analysis. So empirical analysis is in a way very unsuitable to the format that MBTI is laid out in, and that's not a fair basis for evaluation. So right now, right, I understand that actually not everybody is comfortable with using an empirically weak model in their lives. Some of us are just not into that. A lot of us sometimes just want a quantitatively strong or qualitatively strong, and we want the best of both worlds. So regardless of that, choose any model that actually suits your preferences, because essentially what the usefulness of any model that we use in our lives is immediately, it's limited by how useful we think it is. So first of all, I would like to use a lens analogy, which explicates how I feel about MBTI, which is basically that any personality typology can be useful, and it depends on what you make of it. So the lens analogy is really just that MBTI, like many of the other personality types, is a way of viewing the world. So a lens is also a way of viewing the world. So, for example, the Enneagram, it gives us insights into one's core fears and motivations, and the MBTI gives us insight into one's cognitive processes. So these various lenses, when you combine them, you can use multiple lenses, and then you can take them off or you can put them on whenever you consciously want to use them to view other people or to view the world and assess your own biases and perceptions. So bringing you to the end of this presentation, basically I'll leave you with this quote which sums up the value of my presentation, which is basically just that it's good to be more conscious of our biases and perceptions and how we view the world. And basically all of us use the lenses consciously or subconsciously, regardless of whether they are personally constructed theories or they are legit theories, basically. So I hope that in this presentation I've inspired you to either use the multiple lens approach in your life, or that you perhaps want to use the personality typologies as one of the lenses in your lives. Thank you.